Welcome to the new episode of Stream Caffeine. What kind of coffee you bring today? Like for me, I try different things each episode. So this time using this mocha pot. So how about you today?
I have some takeaway coffee actually. It's called Freddo Espresso, and it's some cold coffee we drink here in Greece.
There's a lot of usability improvement for Flink and many other tools, right? I mean, in the end, if even you provide like hundreds, thousands of features, if those are very difficult to understand, very difficult to get started, what's the point, right? And people can easily use this in an unexpected way or just ignore it. Maybe they can have a certain percentage of the workload in Flink and a certain percentage of workload in Time Plus on other systems. Even this week, I noticed Materialize just to refine the marketing message to be operational cloud database or warehouse, something like that, right? So it's more than streaming database or streaming engine, right? What's the relationship for Flink CDC vs, say, Database? You loaded the existing millions of data from the database, but also you want to get the incremental changes. Is that feature more coming from Database or Flink CDC? Even it embedded Database, but add a lot of extra feature to make this more kind of ideal for the real use cases. Almost every player in this data streaming space will have a lot of cool stuff to share and also some great case studies. So it's really one of the best kind of party for people in this data streaming space, the current 2023.
Exactly. I mean, this should be the point, like figuring out how we can all work together. I mean, have the competition in with a healthy way. Like, how do we all evolve together and create amazing stuff that can actually solve business value and get the most out of it? And again, the stream processing space, I mean, itself, it's so complex, so difficult. We need to figure out how we can help, more people to join the community, join the space, and make it easier for the end users to actually get started and understand these things.
Yeah, exactly. Hello, everyone. This is Jove. Welcome to the new episode of Stream Caffeine. And today, I'm so glad to invite my friend Giannis to the talk. And maybe you can do a quick hello, and we can talk about coffee and do your favorite topic, which is data streaming. Yeah.
Absolutely, man. I mean, I'm so excited to be here. It's been a while. And I'm so great to see you again. So I'm Giannis. And I've been working in the stream processing space for many years now. I've been wearing many hats from data engineering and solutions engineering and architecture. Lots of stream and stream processing stuff, and I've been going through companies like SaaS vendors like Lenses and StreamNative and Lenses, and now Ververica these days focusing on Flink, which I completely love. So it's so exciting to be here, man. It's been like, I don't know, 2-3 months now. It's been the whole summer.
Yeah, the summer is supposed to be very relaxing, right? In the beach. I know you read your book. We can talk about your book too. We can have some casual read about data streaming on the beach. But again, I'm not sure about you, but yeah, this summer is very busy for us, for me, and there's some interesting stuff happening. Big announcement later this month. So before we talk about more kind of a serious topic, just to making sure we're on the right episode, what kind of coffee you bring today? Like for me, I try different things each episode. So this time using this mocha pot. So you just put all coffee in and then just brew it. It's quite different than the espresso machine. I
So
like all kind of coffee. So how about you today?
I have some takeaway coffee actually. It's called Freddo Espresso, and it's some cold coffee we drink here in Greece.
Cool. Is that only for the summer, like special edition for summer, or it's
Uh,
all,
it
all
dep
year cold coffee?
it depends. So in summer, most people actually drink this kind of coffee, and overall cold coffee. Myself and many of my friends, we also drink it in the winter, unless it gets way, way too cold, which is not really common, especially here in Athens. So yeah, I mean, when it gets cold, I go with cappuccino most of the time.
That's awesome. Yeah, and we are in different time zones. So I'm in Vancouver now. It's about 8 a.m. How about you now?
Too early, man. It's like 6 p.m. here right now.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so I'm glad we can find this time to have some chat. So you already mentioned your kind of background. You've been in very different companies, in this data domain or even streaming domain. So maybe we can talk about your current employer, right? Ververica, the original
Never.
creator of Apache Flink. So why you are so passionate to join the company? Is there anything like even more surprisingly, more satisfying after you join it? I mean, people outside that is, hey, this is really a great company, have this new cool technology, push this technology to be more mature, better test. But more like people work for the company. Do you have anything else to share with us? Yeah.
So my journey with Flink actually is quite interesting because since my early days at the stream processing world, I was so amazed and by Apache Flink. But because I'm located in Greece, to be honest, there weren't really, especially back in the day. I mean, like stream processing are now gaining way more traction and actually becoming things. So there were really many opportunities to work with Flink. And even though I love the project and I've been around it for a long, long time, I think I actually started working with it more in depth and hands-on like around 3 years ago. And also lots of stuff when I was back at StreamNative. And then there was Aiven and now Ververica. So it's like a journey trying to chase the perfect role and fit for Apache Flink. And for a long time, I mean, until recently that I joined Ververica, I was going through to figure out like what is going on in the streaming space, like what are the best products out there, who actually has some good Flink experience, and like meaningful and fun stuff to work with. And I was really amazed about all the amazing work that takes place at Ververica. And so, I mean, it's been 3 months now and it's so exciting. I mean, there's so much going on and so much being built daily that, I mean, it's crazy. And I love it here. I know. So it's quite
Okay,
fun.
cool. Yeah, and yeah, I know there's some kind of secret sauce in Vertica or even in the enterprise version to push to the next level. But before we talk about the feature side, do you have any kind of involved in some of interesting use cases recently regarding data streaming? We all know that there's people using Flink a lot for like data. There's anything kind of maybe you don't have to give us a long story, but there's anything interesting or surprise you, or like maybe, oh yeah, it's a very creative way to use it, think.
So now that I joined Ververica, to be honest, I'm not so much in the customer facing side and the use cases like I was before. But what is really different and really amazing is the scale that changed. I mean, the scale I'm seeing here is like to a totally different level, and seeing Flink being used in this kind of scale and processing like billions of events daily, it's amazing. And along with that, the most interesting thing that I'm working right now with, and actually I'm trying to build, like more of a community around it. It's with more of the streaming, what we call actually the stream house, which is a combination of streaming and data warehousing with Apache Paimon, which I think it's pretty close or similar, I would say, with all the work you guys are doing there with the streaming databases. So yeah, I mean, it's quite exciting and interesting to see how this kind of architecture is being applied and can unlock way more use cases and bring more power to data engineering teams operating in the stream processing space.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, we can talk about Paimon and maybe the idea of either the streaming database or streaming warehouse. Before that, maybe we can starting from some more kind of a beginner level. Uh, so Flink has been there for a long time. I forgot, maybe 10 years or more or less. And and there's many other framework out there, but some of are no longer so popular. Some go to different directions, such as they say maybe Stone from Twitter, and yeah, the Hadoop areas, all those Flume stuff. So in your mind, why Flink is so popular, and why it is kind of recognized as one of the best open source framework to do the distributed data streaming? Or on the other side, is there anything you think Flink will improve more, and whether it's more for beginners or more like very serious enterprise scale deployments? Again, there's a lot of questions. Yeah, feel free to pick up one of them to get started. Yeah.
No, I mean, we can cover all of those, but I think in order to better understand how we get there, it's like, yeah, I mean, first we need to understand how we got there because if you sit down and realize how much the space has evolved over the years, I mean, it's crazy. Like one day we were back there in Hadoop, and today we are everything around with Flink and all the cloud native things going. Like a few years ago, I mean, as you also know and you are experienced with it, we had Hadoop and Kafka and Spark and all these things. And this is basically the Hadoop days that we have evolved since then, and also Flink started at that time. The way I like to think about it, it's like they were the early adopters, but because we were more in a batch-oriented world, it was more hard, to build a mindset around what Flink had to offer, maybe, and many companies were good enough, I think, with this kind of more, let's say, old architectures. And I think there is a process you have to take in order to reach the Apache Flink, right? Because first you need to understand streaming and things, technologies like Kafka, which I think that they have matured and people have started to actually realize the value and what they have to offer recently. I wouldn't say, I mean, there were many early adopters and many large scale companies, but for most of the companies out there, I think it's been like over the last 2 years that actually started realizing the value there and actually working more heavily with these technologies. And now that they have started actually implementing these use cases, getting more experience with the space, now they also want to go the extra mile and do more sophisticated use cases, unlock the full power of stream processing. I think this is why now Flink starts gaining way more traction, even though it's been around for a long time. That's my take on it, and I think pretty much might make sense. And also, as you can see, like in the last years, like similar to Time Plus, how many new technologies and companies have started in the stream processing space, and people have actually started paying more attention there. And there is so much work and effort taking place for many people working in the stream processing space to actually make it simpler and more comprehensible, also with all these abstractions with SQL and Python, so it's easier to the end users. But again, we have a long way to go there. And yeah, also
Yeah, yeah, sure. And
no, I just also
yeah, go
wanted to
ahead. Yeah.
say that also since similar to Kafka and other technologies out there, since Flink started in the old Hadoop days, uh, it has gone like tremendous work, and even recently trying to, let's say, re-architect some of the initial decisions, architectural decisions that took place back in those days. For example, we are right around the corner within the month. Flink 1.18 will be released, which will add the long-awaited Java 17 support, and it has delayed so much only because it started back then, let's say, um, on the Hadoop days, and it had so many dependencies with Creo and all these things that were really hard to get rid of. But at the same time, it's so amazing to see all the people being involved and doing so much work to evolve the project and make it a better fit to run in cloud native environments and optimize things like state management and many different other things. So yeah, it's a really exciting uh, time, let's say, to be around Flink and the stream processing space in general.
Yeah. Again, Kafka now is so popular, and although there's many different ways to consume data from Kafka, but in many cases, Flink is considered one of the most kind of mature, reliable, scalable way to process data, right? Primarily from Kafka, but also from other sources. I also noticed there are some big ideas regarding Flink 2.0. We don't have to talk about this in this podcast, but we can also try to interview some of your friends in Vertica, like Jack Wu, right? And it'll be great. We can talk about that too. But yeah, I do agree that is people have this really good kind of impression about Flink. It's been engineering in a very elegant and decent way, right? In the Apache fashion, in the Apache way. The community is awesome, right? There's a lot of good committers, a lot of users, the feedback loop, the elegant design, the solid implementation, all the tests, and even stuff like the UI side. So, for example, we have some UI on template side, but there's also a lot of UI in the Flink side. Is really designed to be monitoring, troubleshooting, understanding your Flink job in a more kind of intuitive way, right? Having all those DAG, all those logs. So those are really helpful, right? So,
I mean, but even in the template side, I mean, the user experience that it offers, and especially, I mean, for data teams, I mean, it's somewhat addictive. I mean, it's amazing. I don't know. I mean, you get in there and being able to also see your graphs, your data visualized while also while all the data flows run. I mean, I was like, pfft. So I mean, and considering, I mean, like compared to Flink, how long it's been around? Like I don't know, it's been like 1.5 year now, too. I mean, the work is amazing, and I'm so eager to see way more there and where it goes. I mean, it's amazing. I think I
yeah,
told
we
you, I mean, the user experience is just addictive. That's a word they can use for that.
Yeah, I like that word. I would say there's a lot of choices, right? No matter in the open source area or commercial side or cloud offering, there's a lot of offerings over there. I guess this adaptive user experience is really one of the key elements we should be really focusing on, right? I guess we are doing so in 10 plus. There's a lot of usability improvement for Flink and many other tools, right? I mean, in the end of if even you provide like hundreds of features, if those are very difficult to understand, very difficult to get started, what's the point, right? And people can easily use this in a unexpected way or just ignore it. So we do want to make this easier to use, and we also see some kind of opportunity for us like Templars to like try to build a solution for those data engineering team or platform engineering team if they really want to implement something idea quickly, right? And maybe they can have a certain percentage of the workload in Flink and a certain percentage of workload in Templars or in other systems, and we can build a kind of a solution to complement to each other, right? And we can talk about that a little bit later. So you also mentioned the idea, the project Paimon, right? It is originally called Flink Table Store, and now
Mhm.
it's Paimon. I guess uh, at least from say I watch LinkedIn or like technical blog on the Medium, it's not really a lot of article or case study regarding Paimon. But when I check my kind of my other social media about China, about Asia, it is used in a crazy way. So can you share more about that? Yeah.
Exactly, and this is one of the things I have on my plans, to try and fix, like getting more resources out there. And I'm also in the process of actually creating a blog post around that. And it's really interesting and confusing at the same time. I think, for starters, Paimon, at least for me, came around the perfect timing. I think I discovered it around April, I think. It was in the zero point 0.3 release. And as you said, back then it was called Flink Table Store. And the whole idea was like, I think the initial idea started like a year ago or something. And I think similar to the streaming databases like Time Plus, I mean, we have seen that also Flink has started working towards unified batch stream computing. But what this means in practice is that you have a unified API, but from a business perspective, there are many use cases that still are remain to be unlocked unless you have like some kind of streaming storage layer. I think because Flink started moving towards that direction, and it was also missing, that streaming storage layer part. This is why Apache Paimon, I mean, initially Flink Table Store was introduced. And I think my first impression when I saw the project was like, because at that point I was also exploring lakehouse technologies like Apache Iceberg and Apache Hood. It was like, why do we need, like to create something new from scratch? I mean, don't we already have that?
Yeah, why?
Yeah, this was my first impression. I'm pretty confident that way more people will start feeling this way. But and again, it took me like I think it took me like more than a month to actually start realizing the differences and the value there, because no matter how much you read around it, as you saw around Paimon, there aren't really many things. You can't actually understand the difference. So I started getting hands-on with everything. Um, Basically, the whole idea was, and I think it's also mentioned in the dynamic table proposal of Flink Table Store, uh, was that although we had tools like Iceberg and Apache Hoodie, um, the initial idea and how they started, because both of those tools were actually evaluated before starting with Flink Table Store. They weren't really by design a good fit, not at a good fit for streaming first architectures and workloads. Basically, Iceberg has a really easy to use API, but it's more like microbatching, And although also Hoodie has a more streaming first design, at the same time it's really harder to use, and at least in my experience. And as you scale, due to their design, mainly I would say that there is, especially when you have to deal with upserts and all this kind of things, uh, there is the performance starts to degrade, right? And they also have this concept of copy and write, which is for updates and upserts, the performance is quite poor as you scale, and for merge on read, the query side is more poor as you scale, and it's also difficult to choose, right? Because both of these enforce like you need to choose a cow mode or an or mode. Anyway, I'm getting into many details here that I shouldn't. But yeah, I mean, back to your question, it was the missing streaming storage layer that came to give Flink the flexibility to actually, when you go and create the dynamic tables, which is similar to the materialize used to streaming databases, you can actually query the intermediate tables, whether you're operating on streaming data or on bus data, and the whole idea is to leverage cheap storage like S3 or something else, which I'm pretty sure is close to what you guys are doing with Time Plus.
Okay, cool. And yeah, Paimon, yeah, there's a lot of stuff going on right now. For example, even this week, I noticed Materialize somehow, I'm not sure, call it repurpose or pivot or just refine the marketing message to be operational cloud database or warehouse, something like that, right? So it's more than streaming database or streaming engine, right? So that's maybe some new position for Materialize. So the idea of like Paimon, is that somehow you can consider this as a warehouse You can save multi-years data there. You can have a super fast way to query historical data, but also you can get very low latency data from CDC, from other stuff. So it can cover. Is that right? That is the goal of Paimon is to kind of your ultimate data store for everything, like for no matter for the recent 1 second or the past 10 years.
So if I were to put it in simple words, it's a way for leveraging your streaming data on chip storage like S3, and at the same time leverage the LSM data structure, which is what powers most of the streaming engines out there, to cover better all the streaming use cases. And at the same time, as you ingest your data in your data lake, at the same time, all your data is there, it's available. And you can add any query engine you want to top. Like, for example, you might not want to use Flink SQL. You might want to use Spark or Trino or, I know, Timeblads at some point in the future, or Starlogs for OLAP, or, I don't know, Apache Doris, something like that. And at the same time, one really nice thing is that I mean, most of the data, I would say, that gets into a data lake comes basically from database, right? And change data capture things, along with logs, actually, like Kafka or something. And the really cool part there is that it integrates really good with Flink CDC. And what is really nice with Flink CDC is that it has the recent releases have this kind of incremental snapshot algorithm that allows to read both historical data, and then automatically it switches to use the incremental data. Everything gets in the lake, and at the same time, they have implemented this amazing feature that's called source merging. That I mean, when you want to ingest a whole database that has hundreds of thousands of tables, you typically have to open a connection for every single of those tables. But with source merging, you only use one client, and it can read the different bin logs, the bin log, without actually putting so much stress on the database, which is pretty amazing. And yeah, it's
Cool.
really exciting. As I said,
Yeah,
time.
yeah. We can also talk about the Flink CDC. Yeah, we can talk about that first. So for people who are not so familiar with Flink CDC, or me as a person, I know some, but for example, I do have the question like, what's the relationship for Flink CDC vs say Debian, right? So when we're talking about the example you gave us to that you loaded the existing millions of data from the database, but also you want to get the incremental changes. Is that feature more coming from Debian or Flink CDC? Even it embedded Debian, but add a lot of extra feature to make this more kind of ideal for the real use cases?
So basically, Flink CDC itself uses the Division to capture all the changes from the database. I'm not sure about the exact implementation to check the source code, but if I'm not mistaken, it uses the Visium, to fetch all the changes, but the incremental snapshot algorithm is implemented on the Flink CDC project. So it's basically a combination of those things. And I think also Canal is another technology that's supported there. But if I'm not mistaken, the Vision should be the most popular there.
Okay, so Flink CDC as more like
It's based on the Vision.
yeah, umbrella project. You can leverage stuff like Debian, but also can leverage other library, and because Flink has own like scheduling or state management, checkpointing, clustering, coordination, those stuff, they can have extra features beyond just using Debian, for example, right?
Yeah. And all these things, all these works are taking place in Flink CDC 2.0. So earlier releases don't have these features. And as I said, all this work became because when all this implementation started, it was the early days and the database, no one really took the database in mind. So a lot of work had to be redone to optimize and rework these things and make it more friendly for the database so we don't, stress it and put so much pressure on it.
Yeah, cool. Yeah. Again, I feel like Flink they really build a very good foundation and become like a framework. Even to some degree, it's just like Kubernetes. It's you in most cases, many bigger companies already have a Flink cluster that you can actually run many stuff in the Flink cluster just as you put a new kind of operator or Helm chart in your Kubernetes, right? So it's just an infrastructure, right? And you can run many different things. That part is amazing. But on the other hand, I just want to really discuss this with you. That is, with all those clustering, I also noticed some folks even mentioned they have a few hundred nodes of Flink, even thousand, right? So it is so nice to have such a large scale. I know I also noticed there's some talk regarding how you can run Flink as little as maybe 200 megabyte memory in a single VM. But I guess it can be a common impression that is Flink is so great for scalable, heavy workload, but a little bit kind of too heavy for a kind of a beginner level of user on data engineering, platform engineer, or try locally. Do you agree on that, or do you think it's bad design, or it's not that bad?
Um, so it depends. I mean, I have used technologies that were way more hard, yeah, actually to set up. To be honest, I don't think I had an issue with Flink, but then again, when I actually started with Flink, I had already quite a lot of experience with stream processing systems. And, at some point after years there, your brain is just so programmed in these things that it's easier. And we tend to forget how hard it was in the beginning. They can just use the binaries, for example, and just run, it just spins up a local cluster directly from your IDE. So, especially for development purposes, I don't think people will find, any issues getting started with it. I mean, I think it's more about the mindset thing, especially if you're coming from the bots world, and this is something I have seen a lot with people more new to Flink, rather than actually setting up the cluster and getting started. But again, there are many factors there, so I'm not
Yeah,
sure.
yeah, yeah, sure. I mean, yeah, if you are really get a mission critical uh, kind of project to process data in the real time, do some real time machine learning, fraud detection, yeah, but you really have to check Flink. But if kind of people who just like graduated from school as a kind of started career, and they might check. There's many concepts there, right? The job cluster, job manager, task manager, or DAG, all those stuff. They might feel a little bit overwhelming, but using the doc compose or the
Actually,
hello world should be easy. Yeah.
this is one thing that came to my surprise because I expected the same thing, and then over the summer, accidentally, I talked with three people that actually doing their thesis on Flink, and one of them was also doing it on the autoscaler. I'm like, seriously, you're working with Flink and the autoscaler. I mean, at this age, I mean, this was crazy. I'm like, how can you digest all these topics and work on that? I mean, it was amazing. I mean, I don't know. Either the universities these days do an amazing job, or I don't know, the new kids are coming with superpowers.
Yeah, with the support of like AI, LLM, they can do many things, and all the open source and YouTube, all those things really can help. Uh, yeah, so let's talk about this interface, right? I mean, CQ is one of the way Flink support, but Flink also provide very flexible and extendable API. I guess you can even define how you generate a watermark, how you define create a new window, UDF, all those things. And I guess Java is the maybe with the best support, but also Python, other language also supported. So on the other hand, that is, for example, in Templars, we primarily using SQL, and we have our own REST API to call those SQL, and we have extra SDK for the REST API. But so I guess it's not really more like a challenge, it's more like a choice, right? So, and our choice is using SQL. And Flink, I guess you have so many different options. And do you see more and more people using SQL, or for those people with very kind of customized logic, they do prefer using the API, the low-level API? Yeah.
So I would say that up until quite recently, like until the last year, not many people actually were using SQL, and I think this is going to change a lot going forward. And also, with more streaming databases entering the space, and also Flink moving towards streaming data warehousing. Um, I think that for the most use cases, and especially for data teams, SQL makes the most sense. And there are so many use cases you're just fine with SQL. And I think it's also should also be, I mean, the de facto choice, and the way we're moving forward as a streaming community overall. I think unless you want to do something really sophisticated, like lower level, like I don't know, um, more more sophisticated complex event processing, or some really sophisticated states management, or dealing with time with watermarks and time semantics, you're pretty you're pretty good with SQL. And I have seen many people saying that SQL is limited, but considering you have all these UTFs right available, I'm like, what it's actually quite maybe it's more a matter, of education and actually realizing what you can do there. And I'm pretty sure for the most use cases, especially as all the streaming community invests more there, streaming SQL will be the way to go for the most part. I mean, there might be again some really sophisticated use case that might need lower level APIs.
Yeah, yeah. Again, it's really a choice, right? Some people think seeing a big CQ with maybe 50 lines of CQ is a little bit too much. They have to, for example, the structure is not really from top to bottom, right? It's more about, hey, what's the CTE, what's your subquery? You read it from in nested one and step by step to find out. Maybe people prefer using stuff like Java or Python. It's more kind of a logic. You can add a comment. Again, it's more like a preference, and yeah, I do agree that CQ seem to be more easy to get started, and it can express many different things.
Mhm.
In some cases, people either want more low-level access, or they want to organize their logic in code or with common.
Yeah. And I think it also, again, it depends on the personas maybe, right? Because as myself also coming for more from a more, like uh, coding style with Scala and Java. Originally, even when I started with Flink SQL, I was using code to just, use strings and inject my SQL queries in there. I wouldn't use, like an interface or the Flink SQL client. It took me like years to actually start using the SQL client. So maybe if you come from a more software or engineering background, uh, because at the end of the day, these guys love to code. I mean, it's their job. So maybe it makes more sense for them. But on the other hand, if you're like a data engineer, more used to Python or SQL, or like a data scientist or analyst, SQL should be the way to go. And then you can
Okay.
also, have, the software engineers writing UDFs for the teams of the data engineers, and the other data teams can use them to, to speed up the business processes and value.
Yeah, and there's also even kind of like a talking point, a discussing point regarding say Flink, the fundamental, like the low-level API is say those kind of data stream API, data set API, and the CQ is built on top of it, right? Maybe there'll be some code generation, or it will be some mapping or translation to the low-level API, and a few new projects, open source or commercial, which embrace SQL as the only or the primary interface, then there's no such API which can be called by the user directly. So the engine, the solo focus is to like how to break the SQL to be different kind of courses and have a kind of operator stuff. Do you think that will make some again, this can be arguable, but do you think that will make any difference to the end user? That is, whether there's a different layer in the engine to process CQ, or it's the kind of a more direct optimization on the CQ keyword on the semantics.
This is a tough one.
Sorry about that.
I think it also depends on who the end user is. Maybe I don't know. Like for example, if the tool of the product just addresses teams like data teams, data scientists, analysts, and all these things that will never require to fall that low level, I think it's okay. But for more sophisticated use case, and if you're addressing more complex things, it might definitely be a limitation not having those APIs there.
Yeah, and again, this also, if the user only use SQL, right, the Flink SQL or some other SQL, then it's really become implementation detail, right?
Exactly.
I guess it's case by case, and it's or even over time it will be different implementations, right? So yeah, I guess we don't really have to expect which one is better, right? Converting the SQL to low-level API, then code engine, or engine handle SQL directly. It might be some difference, but there's always some room to optimize.
And at the end of the day, I'm not even sure about if it make more a lot of sense in many use cases, like which one is better. It's more about like the easiness to use. Can you provide business value fast? Because at the end of the day, it's all about providing business value. I mean, getting like a tool there that it's over engineered, even if it's the best, if people can actually use it. And there are many such cases in the industry and other open source projects that the underlying technology was amazing, but they failed, the tool might have failed to progress or gain more user engagement. So there are many factors to consider there. And we also have a new guest here. This is my streaming dog.
Oh, cool, nice.
He popped out.
Yeah, is he or she?
Yeah, it's
Okay,
it's,
yeah, she want to play. Yeah, it's okay, cool. Yeah, we should be wrap up this very soon. And the other topic in my kind of a list is like, do you see any impact or correlation regarding this data streaming, and also what is very hot today is the AI LLM. Do you either directly or indirectly get some cases or project people need use data streaming to support LLM or AI? Yeah.
So this is a really interesting question, and there isn't really, I would say, a clear answer there. And the reason for that is there are these big giants out there, like, Apple and this kind of scale of companies that can actually have first the manpower, the knowledge, and all these things to actually leverage AI, and especially in streaming fashion. But AI is something that everyone wants to do, but there aren't really. I mean, there are many companies that either not ready yet, or it's just really hard to get these things in practice. And then it's also a question of what AI actually means, right? Does it mean generative AI? Is it just a statistical model? These days we tend to call everything AI, so it's really interesting. I would say that deploying some machine learning algorithms and all these things through your streaming pipelines, integrating with feature stores and trying to get your first steps. Um, if you, I mean, I think it requires that you have been operating in the stream processing space at least for a few years, have the required knowledge and all these things. So considering that people are still adopting these kind of things, I think we need to wait a few more years to see more, like streaming ML and AI actually being applied in the space. Not that there aren't, but it's just more, let's say, for premium companies. Um, so yeah, I would say that most companies need to mature and educate their teams and people on streaming data, and then try to go down that road and actually also evaluate if it actually makes sense for the business, right? Because I have seen many use cases that they're like, okay, we want to do AI and streaming, and like, okay, do you actually need it? I don't know. I mean, I'm not an AI expert, or so I'm pretty sure there are many cool companies out there doing a lots of cool stuff around that I have seen, and being keeping an eye on Claypot AI specifically. I believe their work is so interesting, and we're going to see some interesting stuff from them in the future. But yeah, I think these are some of the early adopters and really go to see what this kind of companies will bring to the streaming space. Because I think this particular company is actually operating specifically on streaming data.
Yeah, yeah, it's a very good and practical answer. Uh, yeah, sorry, one more topic is about your book, right? You read the book, and maybe you also work on new ones. Yeah, tell me or share more about this to the audience. Yeah.
So the whole idea with the book started because I was seeing many people getting started with Flink that were like, there aren't really many good resources out there, and it's been around for a long time, and there was only one book that was, I think it was released on Flink 1.7, and we're 1.18, it was just around the corner, and many people were like, we need more advanced examples under the docs and blah, blah, blah. And because I had so many things collected myself, it started for fun one day. I wanted, I mean, I had it as a personal goal to try and create a book at some point, mostly for me. And I want to use my own style. If you check the book, it has, some kind of squirrels in there. So, yeah, it started as fun, but it seems like people actually like it, and they find it meaningful, which was really nice to see. Getting such good comments and helping out, people with their first steps and get more familiar with Flink. I will see.
Okay,
Maybe who knows? Might be a follow up.
cool. And do you also work kind of certain percentage of this kind of creating courses or master class in Ververica? I noticed you being very active on LinkedIn, sharing a lot of best practice or case study or new features. Uh, is part of your current role in Ververica is doing such education training evangelist?
Yeah, I think especially going forward, I will be somewhat involved with trainings. I mean, the whole reason I also started with these things was to help people understand the passive link better, and help minimize the learning curve. And at the same time, due to my interest for streaming data architectures, work more with Paimon and all the potential it can unlock, and the business value it can bring. So yeah, I would say something around those ends there.
Okay, cool. And yeah, and you being as a a heavy user or an expert on data streaming, on Flink, on Pulsar, on many things. Let me ask this directly. That is, what's your impression to time plus? Anything you think we should improve, or if people who are not familiar with Flink or time plus, do you have any comments how these two products can be work together?
So basically, as I said before, and for anyone out there, if you check Time Plus, and I think you also have a playground there. If you go around playing with streaming data, and especially for people, as you know, that don't have the engineering background and want to analyze data, like data scientists and data analysts, it's going to be addictive. The only thing that I'm really curious on how people will feel about it is I think the SQL syntax is somewhat different than the standard ANSI, or am I mistaken? I'm not sure. I think this is the
Yeah,
impression.
we have a lot of debates on that one. So, for example, like when you run a SQL, like select star from the string name, do you expect to get all the existing data, or do you expect to get the future data? Yeah, I'm not sure what's the behavior for Paimon, for example, if they position
No,
themselves as a streaming
I meant
warehouse.
no, I meant more from the Flink SQL, like the ANSI standard. If I'm not mistaken, it had a few differences, or am I mistaken? I think I'm only saying that because to me, the nature, of the people that can actually find the most value out of this product is like data analysts and data scientists, data engineers, which I'm pretty sure they will love it. But just because the brain is so hard coded, in the sequels that is similar, to Flink SQL or PostgreSQL, these kind of things. If there are, some changes in the syntax and not ANSI compatible, if it's going to be, find like they need a learning curve or something. Or I might be mistaken. I don't know. I mean, we haven't talked since summer, and I'm not sure if there were any differences in the syntax. Nothing more.
But yeah, again, it's a point taken. Yeah, we do need to make this. Even with talk SQL, but people may mean different things on SQL. We really needed to making sure people get what they expected, and they can reuse some SQL from other systems to run them in time plus in the expected way. Yeah.
But other than that, when it comes to streaming databases, I don't know. I have told before, time plus and the product is like literally just addictive. Ah, really interesting and cool stuff.
All
And
right,
again,
cool. And
I'm just waiting for
yeah,
more.
nice. Okay, cool. Yeah, yeah, we are also going to make some big announcement in 2 weeks probably. So happy to
And
have the other discussion with you on
I'm
that.
so looking forward to see you all guys at Current 2023. I mean, it's going to be amazing. And it's also going to be my first time in the
Okay,
US.
cool.
I'm so excited about that.
Oh, are you going to join the current?
Yeah, I will be there.
Oh, nice, cool. Yeah, that definitely. I will happy to meet you in person.
Coffee in person and not virtually.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I'm not sure whether you're going to join the Flink Forward in Seattle. Maybe extend your trip, or maybe anyway. So I'm so glad we can finally meet in person. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and stop by our booth. We are going to share some coffee beans and cool T-shirts, stickers, and we can of course discuss more.
I'm all about the swags. I'm all about the swags.
All right, cool. So before we wrap up, do you have anything else to mention? Yeah, or ask? Yeah.
No, I think I'm pretty good. And again, I'm just waiting for the cool stuff. I know they're coming at the big announcements. And people just stay
Yeah,
tuned.
and
Wait for these things.
yeah. Stay tuned, and uh, yeah, and then not just us, right? I guess almost every player in this data streaming space yeah, including Confluent, we'll have a lot of cool stuff to share and also some great case studies. So it's really one of the best kind of party for people in this data streaming space, the current 2023.
Exactly. I mean, this should be the point, like figuring out how we can all work together. I mean, have a competition in a good, healthy way. Like, how do we all evolve together and create amazing stuff that can actually solve business value and get the most out of it? And again, the stream processing space, I mean, itself, it's so complex, so difficult. So we need to figure out how we can help, more people to join the community, join the space, and make it easier for the end users to actually get started and understand these things.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, cool. So glad to have this talk.
Amazing, man.
Maybe
Always
probably will
exciting.
be our next meeting will be in person. So looking forward to it. Okay, stay tuned, and that's this episode of Streaming Caffeine. Yeah, thank you, everyone.
See you, man.